Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're listening on this FinCloud Summit. I'm going to touch on the revolution on the trustworthy agent commerce in a hybrid ecosystem. My name is Govind from Global Payments, and thanks to the CSA leaders for providing us an opportunity to talk about trustworthy agentic commerce in this summit. As everybody is aware, agentic commerce is a reality, and it's coming true, and where we are moving away from the traditional commerce. In the traditional commerce scenario, humans are involved in every step, from manually browsing, selecting the product, and all the commerce activity happens through a single synchronous session, and the platforms operate there in silos between merchant, shopping carts, to the payment, acquisition, fulfillment, etc. And if you look at the market study, shows that 70% had high abandon rate in terms of the traditional commerce, whereas in the digital economy, it's changing to autonomous AI agents, where AI agents helps us in doing the discovery, and based on our intent, execute tasks asynchronously with cross-platform interoperability across the merchants, shopping carts, payment rails, as well as the product delivery, etc. Right, and it reduces the friction and percentage of cart abandonment. And the agentic commerce brings in new capabilities such as context-aware pricing and multi-merchant optimization, where if you wanted to do a purchases across multiple different merchants, the agents would actually do that work for us. And then it will also help with proactive replenishment based on the predicts. Say, for example, if you're running something out on your kitchen or in the office supplies or in the hospitals, right? And there are scenarios where B2B agent negotiation can occur as well as and these are done either through user delegates asynchronously or through automated autonomous commerce activity from a business perspective. There are various levels of autonomy levels in the agentic commerce. Let's understand the spectrum of it. Where level one, it's where human makes all the decision, agent just providing the information, right? And then second, agent recommends, hey, these are some of the options that you could look at, and helps discover products and services. Whereas the bounded action, agent would actually buy stuffs based on a limit that we provide as part of our intent. Level three is agent independently helps in terms of maintaining inventory levels and support with fulfillment. Whereas level four, it's a full autonomy where we set execution policies based on defined goals and thresholds, and then the agents operate autonomously, completely based on the supply chain cost. And each of them has got different security controls. As we scale the autonomy level, the amount of security implications need to be validated. Whereas level 0 to 1, it's basic authentication validations, but level 2 and 3 needs cryptographic mandates and audit. Level 4, in addition to what's mentioned in level 0, 1, 2, 3, it needs additional continuous monitoring plus AI safety controls all across the place as well. If you look at, it's a protocol movement when it comes to the agentic commerce, as the trend is being shifting from a normal web from HTTP to autonomous agent, which needs open standard to discover products, transact across different platforms, as well as new capability to understand, okay, what is the risk surface that we need to address? And we will be touching some of them as part of our confusable deputy attacks, prompt injection, identity spoofing in the upcoming, especially on the blueprint side of it. When it comes to the protocol stack, you're seeing a couple of protocols over here, right? Where we have UCP, which is for Universal Discovery Checkout Primitives, ACP. It's in conversation checkout and delegated payments. And this brings in various aspects from trusted goal perspective. How do we make agent-initiated transactions authorized, auditable, non-repeatable? Because our transactions once initiated, right? In the payment industry, we look at disputes. How do we make sure the dispute claims are kept very less? So that's why the transaction has to be non-repeatable and bounded by customer expectation and regulators' expectation. Even we are actually spanning across different systems, cloud, edge, and the legacy platforms. From a protocol stack perspective, each of them has got its various capabilities that offer. And some of the examples from UCP perspective is where it helps with product catalog discovery and making necessary transport agnostic and human not present flows as well. And it also like links to the identity from UCP perspective. Whereas from ACP perspective, if you look at the secure credential, the token thing and the transmission layer where like where delegated payments is done to keep the PCI scope like limited, as well as like if you look at the agentic payments protocol, it supports for cryptographic mandates from intent card payment in both like human present and human not present scenarios. And main role from agent payments protocol is non-repeatable proof of consent, where we kind of like track them and make sure the disputes are kept at a lower rate. And when it comes to the completely like autonomy level, the B2B transactions where agent makes procurements through the catalog and invoice matches, inventory replenishment for based on the safety thresholds, and onboarding suppliers and like doing a compliance check based on smart contracts that's being set up between the buyer role and agent spend categories, whatever the vendor that's being allowed, and then based on like existing like contract hash binding, and then step up approval where needed, like there are exceptions. And these are deterministic in nature where human in loop where required, but like most of the decision would be done autonomously by the agents. And this is for B2B transactions is another example from an agentic commerce perspective outside the protocols like what's being mentioned. And then from an agent to agent commerce patterns, right? Like where in pattern one, human to agent and merchant, where like user delegates it to an agent, like an agent interacts in the traditional checkout scenario, where merchant system doesn't get changed. It's a trust relationship between user and agent. Whereas in terms of like human agent, agent to merchant, where there is a negotiation layer, where the user agent negotiates with the merchant agents, and then like the dynamic pricing, terms, delivery, all those things are agreed. This requires mutual verification, and there has to be a trust between agent to agent via something like a verifiable credential where we can prove that, okay, this is the agent like has done this action based on this user's behalf, and this agent has been delegated some task to other agents. That's another scenario. And then like the third pattern is agent to agent, where it works based on completely like smart contract enforcement, pre-established contracts and mandates, inventory agent, auto reorders from supplier agents. So these are the three different like patterns like what we see in the industry that's coming up. When we are talking about this commerce patterns, everything has got its own threat landscape too, like where we need to take into account. Say, for example, in the discovery phase, we may see the price manipulation, poison like listing, fake merchants being showed up, and the mapping like would fall under like the Mastro, which is one of the CSA's like threat modeling for agentic AI and AI-based systems, where it touches the layer 2 data ops framework ecosystem. In Stride, it talks about tampering spoofing, and Mitre similar like mapping, as well as like OWASP top 10 related overlap on over reliance on agents like prompt injection, insecure outputs that's being produced. And then when it comes to the transaction phase, card surfing, address hijacking, payment token theft, these are like so much of those threads that occur available that we need to take into account and have like mitigation controls. We are going to cover how are we going to mitigate this for using the threat model, right? Where like in this case, like you saw around identity spoofing and tool hijacking, where fake agents, fake tool endpoints, credential theft happens, and the supply chain plugin abuses. If we address the security threats around identity, that might actually like help us address some of these mitigation controls for it, right? And the second one is around indirect injection of the content and policy bypass, like from prompt injection, jailbreaking perspective, and then utilizing like tools to exfiltrate the data through the prompts that's being sent. And then the main important aspect we have to look at from a threat perspective is, okay, what happens around the fraud and disputes? Identifying who approved it. Can we make sure like this or non-repeatable transaction where if we don't have a durable like evidence of consent, we may not be able to prove, okay, who approved for this transaction and fight against the dispute claim. It will make it like very weak from a user present signal, and then like it will be also like a impact on the poor linkage between parties who were involved in the transaction. And that's why the security requirements need to be strong to make it trustworthy. When we mean trustworthy, what does this mean? It means that it has to have the strong agentic identity for workload and the external like entities who are participating in this agentic commerce. And each one of them like should also have explicit mandates. The mandate should be non-repeatable, and then continuous verification and anomaly detection, central policy decisioning, cryptographically verifiable audit trial that are immutable in nature, and then applying the secure by design and privacy principles. If you look at from those security requirements, what CSA has done? CSA has done a wonderful job in terms of the CSA AI Control Matrix. AI Control Matrix, which provides a vendor neutral set of control objectives, which spans across like 13 different domains across all the life cycle from design to like retirement. And the main aspects on the AI control matrix domain that gets applied in terms of agentic commerce, the core domains that we should focus on is identity access management, logging and monitoring, data security and privacy, application security, governance risk compliance, threat and vulnerability management. So when it comes to identity, the OAuth 2.1 with verification, key management, as I said earlier, like about immutable logging, anomaly detection, and then like on the data security, like minimizing what data need to be collected, and then not to have like sensitive payment information as part of the flow, offload them through credential management using something like tokenization, and prevent like prompt injection using guardrails, and then make sure all of the like the governance and compliance requirements are driven through policy. Open policy agent could be a great example how we can actually like meet those requirements. We'll dive deeply into the blueprint how open policy agent would be all used. So when it comes to the zero trust for agentic commerce, it's one of the fundamental principles that we need to make sure the zero trust architecture is applied in the agentic commerce world, especially like from identity perspective, using something like SPIFFE, secure production identity framework for everyone, which can be for enterprise managed, and then decentralized identity with verifiable claims for untrusted agent interactions. Because in case of agentic commerce, the communication might happen within an entity or between entities, between partners, between users. There are various scenarios. So that's why like identity should be at the core when it comes to the zero trust for these agents, and like never actually like trust any agent's actions by default. Always like verify, like validate through policies, and then mandate verification should be done at every step. And that's why like mandate based authorization, like where you need to have an explicit context and consent with signatures for non-repudiation, and then we continuously verify through trust score, fraud detection, anomaly detections, any kind of like step-up based controls that need to be included. And in case if there is a need to have like a human in the loop on high fidelity transactions, those has to be in place as part of the architecture principles. And then one of the other aspect is like least privilege. Like when it comes to the tools, keep it like purpose bound and make sure the data, what it had got access is kind of like fine grained control, like tenant isolation, because some of these scenarios, it could be a multi-tenant based implementation. And application security plays like a major role in supporting the zero trust architecture as well. Let's look at how we actually like treat this policy choke point when it comes to the overall like blueprint between the edge runtime service side cards as part of our AI ready gateway solutions. And then the auditability. Auditability is one of the important aspects that we need to like take into account because it has to be cryptographically verified through chain of custody and appropriately like logged, monitored as well. And then when it comes to the architecture issue risk mapping, you look at the user agents, AI gateway, commerce layer, and infra model. These are the various like layers that would be involved in the agentic like commerce transactions. And that's why like each of them would have associated risks, and we need to have like mitigating controls based on the AI control metrics. Say for example, from application security perspective, include like input sanitization, like validate the wallet signatures and provide the contextual security to those user agents. And then when it comes to the gateway, for example, implement like a centralized policy decision point, use LLM as a judge, guardrails, like monitor for the threats and apply like preventive control for the threats and monitor them. As well as like when it comes to the commerce layer, like fraudulent, how are we tackling for fraudulent transaction, replay attacks? And some of them could be addressed through the cryptographic mandates, the transaction TTL. And when it comes to the infrastructure and model, like apply the foundational like security, what need to be applied based on CSA's control like metrics as well as AI control matrix using like things like confidential computing, where we need to, etc. And then, as I mentioned, identity should be at the core. For example, if it's an entity managed services, use the workload identities or SPIFFE in wherever possible. So that way, like you could use the SPIFFE framework to support edge agent service gateway mandate verification all within like your own ecosystem that are enterprise managed, and which will help like reduce the blast radius by rotating those short-lived credential very quicker. And then it also like provides attestation and issuance from node perspective, the selector like perspective, as well as like it's portable. As long as like you use the workload identity, you can actually like port your workload across like hybrid environments as well. A simple like the SPIFFE framework looks like MTLS trust chain is there will be a spear server which issues the S bits, and then like the spear agent which attests the node and workload, which is sent to the gateway, which are PKI based, and those S bits are validated, and the mandates are verified within the entity environment. And whereas when it comes to the external agents, right, that's where it's very important to talk about the decentralized identities. Decentralized identities should be supported cross business. So that way you validate those agents using a verified credentials. Those verified credentials act as a main artifacts that these agents would be using for cryptographic mandates and signing the intent, right? And where you could actually like use the decentralized like trusted credential providers, it can be verified by multiple different parties like merchants, gateways, acquirers, using a common like trusted agent registry, verifiable like a controller, where these credentials are issued, and they would use these credentials for getting short-lived like access tokens, like JSON, like something like a JSON web token. It's interoperable across like different entities as well, and this will actually like eliminate the need for the entities to manage the credential like API client ID and secret, right? Because API client ID and secret, it brings in an open door for access issues where there may be an agent with that identity of client ID and secret. It may have a lot of permission to other tools and services. But whereas when you tie in a agent to external like decentralized identity with verifiable credential, we can scope them to a specific set of like purpose access, and the policies can be defined how the access is going to be limited. And then when it comes to the identity, there are various steps that need to be taken into account, from provisioning to decommission, right? Where like as part of the provisioning, the issuance happen, and then like the activation happens as part of the handshake with the different like protocols, be it UCP, ACP, etc. And then the standard transaction behavior comes into play. If we identify a compromise anomaly detected, it should be easily revocable within like less than 5 minutes. So that way the further damage can be actually like limited. And how that decommission would work is cryptographically like shredding the credentials and marking that as, hey, it's this agent's identity has been compromised from the verified credential perspective. So then the agent need to actually like register again to the decentralized identity and apply new verified credentials by proving its identity. And then along with the identity, the strong authorization comes into play. And that's where the external decision points like policy decision points and those policy decisions are enforced locally using policy enforcement points, where the policy definition like decision points are based on policy as code, open support from open policy, or other like frameworks that are available to support the policies. And those policies are easily extensible from authorization perspective using sidecars. And then when it comes to the modern like client identification, use like MTLS or JWT based client authentication method and use that information along with your authorization server metadata for discovery, as well as like use the client IDs like metadata documents. If there is a pre-registration that's not feasible, using something like dynamic client registration, and then bind the tokens to the channels like or keys where possible. So that way, like whenever like these agents are using, they're like authentication tokens with the verifiable credentials, and mandates would come through the gateway from authentication and externalized authorization using like OPA or rules, and which can be like once the policy decisions are made, the policy would be enforced locally at the policy enforcement point like a gateway, and then like it would pass it through the service. Let's talk about the AI ready gateway. The AI ready gateway are a set of like capabilities that would be provided using an external like solution like a API management platform or a purpose built API ready gateway, AI ready gateways that are available in the market. What it actually like does is it does help with orchestrating the LLM safety controls, MCP like guardrails, policy guardrails as code, input output validations from LLM perspective or like the AI related workload perspective. It's like a a call to a LLM or be it a call to a MCPs or agent to agent calls. So AI ready gateway will actually like help route from multimodal routing for LLMs as well as like multiple like routing to different MCPs in a cost effective way. Also like it will help to evaluate around A/B evaluation as well. And then like it will provide like complete open telemetry based traces, a centralized audit like logs, then provide metrics around the token tool usage, and also like it will help with compliance reporting to say how the guardrails are getting applied and how the validation happens from auth N, auth Z perspective. How are they compliant to different like the UCP conformance side, ACP conformance side from a payment handler standpoint? All those like capabilities can be enabled within the AI ready gateway, which seamlessly integrate with the API management platforms as well. And then other important aspect that we need to like look at is the mandates. Mandates are the unit for trust. Say for example, when I'm trying to like buy something through an agent, I say, hey, my max amount is $50 to purchase this concert ticket, right? The agent understands that, hey, my intent is to buy only tickets like for a given concert within like as a given amount. And then when agent actually like identifies a concert ticket, then like it actually like applies, oh, so user has actually like provided this intent and cart mandate, then it will actually like sign those things using something like ECDSA signatures, and those signatures are verified at the payment rails. And the validated mandates are stored as part of the payment rails for future like usage. If there is mismatch in the mandates and whatever the signature, if it gets tampered as part of the verification, if it's invalid, the transaction would be rejected. So that's where like any malicious activity that happens through the agents can be easily identified as part of this mandate verification that are based on cryptographically like signed signatures, and it's being signed using something like a verifiable credential. So that way like you know that like, hey, this is the entity that signed, and you kind of like validate them. When it comes to the user context and mandate, like as I mentioned, like the user context has to be verified. And then on the hybrid integration, the privacy by design and secure by design principles like data minimization, tokenization, the secure by design integrations like using strangler patterns, and then protocol transactions need to happen at the gateway level between REST, MCP, agent to agent. And then sidecar-based enforcement need to be looked upon, and break glass access need to be like applied for revoking compromised agent. The main important aspect, if you look at agentic commerce, the blueprint looks something like this. As we touched the edge layer, user agent, autonomous agent, and the wallet like what they have for those agents from decentralized identity providers, right? And then the commerce layer, which is UCP, ACP, AP2, which supports like discovery, and which gets routed through LLM, and the LLM gateway or MCP gateway or agent to agent gateway, that would have like a tighter integration with the identity ecosystem for credential proofing, verifiable credential, as well as like issuing the JWT tokens for the agents to operate. And then on the side, like you would see, like there is a policy enforcement based on the policy decisioning, then like strong monitoring, open telemetry, and various like security layers, including like key management, etc. And then like typically like these transactions would actually like flow through the standard payment infrastructure and mandate services as well. So if you look at as part of like our AI control matrix, we talked about like various aspects. Application security that gets applied across all the layers, the guardrails, that the guardrail like gets defined at the agent layer as well as like at the gateway layers, and other like supporting like foundational areas like identity and the security layers of observability. And then authorization management through policy based access controls or attribute based access controls using policy as code, as well as not making a major shift in terms of the payment rails, making it like operate seamlessly with the existing like payment rails as well. These gateway and this blueprint like plays a major role in terms of enabling the agentic commerce and meeting some of the control matrix that's needed. Let's look at the risk mitigation, what's happening with the AI gateway. So the AI gateway, as part of like our design and build phase, it addresses the secure SDLC, policy enforcement, least privilege, data protection, as well as the detective controls in place from continuous monitoring perspective, anomaly detection, adversarial robustness, as well as output handling from hallucination check, fact checking, etc. And then also like from audit and improve phase, it helps with non-repudiation, as well as like support with supply chain then integration with the identity for DID registry and the help with the forensics. And the key takeaway here is the AI control matrix for implementing agentic commerce. It's not just a checklist, it's a framework. And that framework helps with each of the specific phases we as enterprises would like to apply granular risk controls. And here are some of the examples of the control matrices. These slides would be shared with you guys. Talks about the shared infrastructure, supply chain, and then UCP, agentic commerce, and the agent payments protocol. It has been neatly mapped across various areas. And then other important aspect is at the edge, utilizing some small language model for intent classification, schema checks, and agent guardrails, fraud heuristics is something like that need to be taken into account. And even extending it the fraud detection at the edge also will help minimize some of the fraud patterns that what we would be seeing in the evolution of agentic commerce. Last but not the least, the important aspect here, the merchant acquirer acts as the critical trust anchor, where helps with the agentic flows from dispute path between issuer and merchant standpoint and collect the evidences on the mandates and maintain those mandates for any disputes and chargebacks, as well as offer services advanced fraud detection, heuristic analysis as well. And then it would help from a merchant acquirer standpoint as we attaches the mandate evidence, be it human present or human not present, and share okay, what are the downstream impacts from agent involvement standpoint, as well as standardize the evidence packages for chargebacks. And the merchant acquirer will act as a repository for the mandates, maintaining the end-to-end evidence artifact for non-repeatable transaction. And then any step up to make sure there is a high risk mandate gets applied based on the fraud signals or the behavior patterns of the agents, etc. as well. And there are a few success metrics that we need to take into account: security, reliability, dispute readiness, governance. These are success criteria that will help to make the agentic commerce successful in the implementation. And agentic commerce is the trust in the future currency using open protocols, zero trust with the AI control matrix offered by CSA. And then utilizing acquirers and existing payment rails as the ultimate trust for the payment security and dispute resolution, and then adhering to security privacy by design principles. And they should not be considered as after the thought as well. Any questions, feel free to ask in the chat panel. We'll be happy to answer them. And thanks for your time.